welcome to tonight's event, Growth Through AI and Automation in the Warehouse. Warehouses today are under more pressure than ever. Rising labour costs, increasing service expectations and constant disruption. As a result, many organisations are looking beyond traditional optimisation and toward AI-driven decisions and automation to drive real, substantial growth. In today's session, we'll explore how next-generation warehouse technologies are being used, not just to reduce cost, but to improve resilience, scalability, and workforce effectiveness. We'll look at where AI and automation are delivering tangible value today, and how organisations can take practical steps towards adoption. So we're pleased to be joined by Softion and Trion Solutions, who bring complementary perspectives across warehouse software, system integration, and automation strategy. Your speakers today are James Ward and Eric Malondo. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Eric. James is a logistics technology specialist who has spent 25 years being a trusted advisor on supply chain execution, with hands-on experience across warehouses, transportation, and order fulfillment. James helps organisations modernise their operations through scalable, data-driven technology. Eric is a senior solutions consultant at Softion with over a decade of experience in warehouse management systems. He specialises in pre-sales solution design, AI-enabled optimization, and operational integrations, partnering with customers to translate complex requirements into scalable, real-world WMS solutions. Over to you.
Thanks, Alice. Thanks very much. So yeah, AI has made some significant steps forward over the last 10 years, and we're now seeing some, real use cases coming into warehouse operations, and Eric and I will kind of discuss that in the coming moments. In the early days of AI, that mostly meant things like recognizing the difference between a dog and a cat, those things where the systems were looking at those things and training themselves. And also things like being able to have your Netflix or your Amazon suggest what you might want to add to your kind of viewing over, the next few days and weeks and things like that. But today, AI is way more than that. It's writing code for people. It's explaining and summarizing complex questions that you ask it. And the question you ask it and the way you ask that is a key thing in terms of setting up the way you answer the question and the prompts and the way you then also ask it how to respond back to you. That's really the kind of the science and the expertise of it. It's even driving cars, designing chips and new drug formulas, generating images like video, music, 3D models, interpreting large language models. Often this is called, generative AI, which is where the engine has learned from existing data feeds and it's learned patterns and it's creating the results based on this. I personally use, AI most days, every day. I mean, in my personal life and in business life. So an example of personal might be travel. It's really useful in saying, I'm going from this place to that place, including a flight, including a train. How can I do that to get there? And what train options do I have? What flight options do I have? It just comes back with the options so much more easily and quickly than trying to go and do that research yourself. And the other thing in a business sense is research. We all used to go look at Google or other search engines and hammer out trying to find those websites. These search engines, these things like the Chat GPTs and the Google search engine powered by AI brings back that research so much more easily for us. I mean, it's really powerful and time saving. The big new kind of word in artificial intelligence is agentic, and you probably have heard that from a lot of the software providers and other people commentating on all software and areas of business and operation. And that could be something specific like an agent looking at slotting optimization in the warehouse, or it could be something more holistic looking at supply chain challenges more generally. And then another thing which is quite common and happening these days is for those agents to start talking together and talking with each other. So maybe it's the warehouse agent talking to the planning agent, or talking to the part of the transportation system, or whatever that might be. And what we're going to have over this next time is Eric and I are going to give you some thoughts and opinions over these topics, as well as how this impacts automation. And I'm going to do that as we're going to do that as a kind of a question answer thing. So I'll ask a couple of questions of Eric, and then he's going to ask some back of me. And then we'd like you to also add your questions into the Q&A box, and then we'll allow a bit of time later on to come back to those questions and give you our opinions and views on those questions. So the first one that I want to kind of pose to you, Eric, is what role does generative AI play in the warehouse operations in terms of, exception handling, analytics, training, and those kind of things?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for the intro, James. Um, so that was a lot. I know AI is a lot, but first off, generative AI plays a very practical role in the warehouse. So I know we talk about, it's very ethereal, very out there, but let's talk about kind of the specifics. It's not really about chatbots. It's about accelerating human decision making. In a warehouse, most of the time is spent in three places: learning the system, resolving exceptions, and trying to understand what just happened. And that's exactly where generative AI delivers the most value. From a training and onboarding perspective, generative AI helps us move away from static manuals and tribal knowledge. So you're not sifting through a giant user manual. You're getting you're getting the knowledge right there. You're scraping it out of the system. With SAIL, aka Softion's AI layer, particularly with SAIL Assist, users can ask natural language questions like things like, how do I receive a damaged pallet, or why did this particular wave fail? Instead of a generic help file, the answers are pulled from Softion's live configuration. So again, not just static things, not things from years ago, not things from, the base product, your live configuration, as well as things like rules and workflows. That means new workers become productive faster, and experienced users don't have to leave the screen they're on to get the answers that they need. In exception handling, generative AI becomes a real-time problem-solving layer. When something breaks, so like a robot stops, or a shipment can't be allocated, or a carrier label fails to print, SAIL, again, Softion's AI layer, can explain what happened. It can summarize the root cause in plain English and recommend the next best action. Rather than digging through logs or dashboards, supervisors can simply ask, why did this order miss a cutoff, and get a clear, actionable explanation. And in analytics, generative AI can, finally make that data usable. Warehouses generate a huge amount of data, but most people don't really have the time to write queries or build dashboards or things like that. With Sale Reach and Sale Assist, managers can ask questions like, why did pick productivity drop yesterday? Or which zones are causing congestion this week? And get narrative, contextual answers backed by real live data, not just charts. So when we talk about generative AI at Softion, we're not really talking about replacing people. We're talking about giving operators, supervisors, and engineers a real-time expert inside the WMS, one that understands their warehouse, their rules, and what's happening right now live. And that's what turns AI from a buzzword into an operational advantage.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I mean, another thing, labor, obviously, as we know, is one of the biggest cost elements of any warehousing operation. Typically it's, more than 50%, sometimes, a hell of a lot more of the cost base of any, warehouse. So, if we think about that, how do we use AI to do better demand forecasting and dynamic labor planning so that we can,
Yeah.
make more insightful decisions around the labor we need and where we need it, but leveraging that artificial intelligence?
Yeah, that's huge. Forecasting is huge. I mean, when we look at the traditional space, so traditionally demand forecasting and labor planning have all been very backward looking. So you're looking into the past, what happened with last year's volume. Maybe you can do things like apply some seasonality, factor in a promotion that you're running right now or a sale, and then we lock in a plan. The challenge with that, though, is that warehouses don't run on averages. Warehouses run on what's actually happening today, this hour in this particular zone, and AI changes all of that. On the demand side, modern AI models don't rely on historical order volumes. They ingest a much broader set of signals. So things like SKU level ordering patterns, promotions that are going on, cancellations that have happened, returns, and even external factors. So things like weather events or regional things happening in your area. The result is a forecast that's more granular and more responsive, and it's far more accurate than any static model could be. And that matters because forecasts drive everything downstream. So where inventory is staged, how work is waived, and how much labor you actually need to meet a service commitment. Labor is where the real operational payoff shows up. Historically, labor planning is static. You build a weekly schedule, you assign people to functions, and then you spend the rest of the week firefighting the reality doesn't when your reality doesn't match up with whatever plan you've made, last week, last month. With AI-driven dynamic labor planning, that model flips. So instead of asking, how many pickers do I need today? The system can answer way more precisely. So things like, how many pickers do I need in zone A from 10 to noon, or maybe in zone B from 1 to 4? AI can predict workload by hour, by task, and by area. It can flag when performance is going to fall behind before it even happens, and it can recommend actions, pulling those cross-trained associates, starting overtime, or reassigning work, all in real time, based on what's actually happening on the floor. So instead of managing labor once a week, you're continuously optimizing it throughout the day. And the business impact is significant. You get higher service levels because staffing matches the real demand. You reduce labor costs by avoiding overstaffing and last-minute overtime, and associates have a better experience because workloads are more predictable and more aligned to reality. At Softian, that's kind of how we think about AI. Forecasting feeds labor planning. Labor planning feeds execution. And AI sits kind of in the middle of those, constantly learning, adjusting, and keeping the operations on track. That's how AI stops being theoretical and starts becoming a competitive advantage on the warehouse floor. So I did have a question for you, James, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This one's about automation, one of my favorite topics. Can warehouse automation become a competitive differentiator, or is that, automation in the warehouse, is that just table stakes at this point?
So yeah, I mean the automation of old was super efficient, very efficient, designed for, but it was inflexible and not easy to adapt. For example, a pallet ASRS, very good at moving in full pallets and partial pallets, and then bringing them out to good people to use from it. But it is not easy to adapt that into something else, even to extend it so that it was able to look after, a bigger area had significant, cost changes to it. So the challenge becomes when the business needs to change, when the business needs to do something different in terms of their automation. And what we're seeing with modern automation is that it's looking at that in a very different way. So, as I say, it was designed for a specific purchase, not modular, not extendable. Modern stuff is modern, it's extendable. Take, for example, a goods demand system where you're bringing in totes back to workers so they can pick items out of it or put items into it. Those things now are extendable so that they can be extended to take on more capacity, or they can be extended to have more goods demand stations. There's a different way of looking at the way that automation comes in and is used in the warehouse. Another example is robotics. So robotics is something which has, really exploded in the last few years and is putting people alongside robots with cobots, or in terms of, AMRs, where an AMR is moving pallets around now, around the facility and working at the same space as all of the other kind of people and operations that are going on within there. The other thing that we're also seeing is the communication methods have changed significantly for automation. It used to be that they were, socket interfaces, or even flat files, dare I say, to share the information between a WMS and a warehouse control, and ultimately the automation itself. Those are now being changed to be modern versioned APIs, so that the integration with these systems is much easier to take on and to onboard and to be flexible in terms of how things move. So I think, it is becoming a competitive differentiator because it's changing, and it's changing for the good, and for the ability to have more flexibility and more ability to make change.
Yeah, for sure.
So Eric, if we think about, AI now alongside automation, how can that directly contribute to the revenue growth versus cost reduction for an operation?
Yeah, I mean, cost savings matter. Lower labor costs, fewer errors, better space utilization. But to borrow your phrase, those are table stakes. So the real differentiator is what AI-driven automation enables on the revenue side of the business. Here's what I mean. So when you apply AI to warehouse automation, you're no longer moving boxes faster. You're improving how reliably, flexibly, and how intelligently you fulfill demand. And that's how it shows up in very real revenue drivers. First, service levels become a sales weapon. AI optimized picking, packing, and shipping help you hit cutoffs more consistently, ship more orders same day, and avoid late or split shipments. That directly improves customer retention, contract renewals, and your ability to win new business, especially in a 3PL environment and retail environments where service performance are part of that commercial agreement. Secondly, you unlock more throughput with added headcount or buildings. AI orchestrates people, robots, conveyors, and work queues in real time. That means you can push more volume through the same footprint during peaks, during promotions, and during those seasonal surges we have every year, and say yes to more orders instead of turning those orders away. And then third, you reduce friction. That friction, like I said earlier, that kills revenue quietly. Things like stockouts, missed picks, congestion, missed carrier cutoff times, those are all revenue leaks. AI detects those issues earlier and adjusts the flow before they become customer visible problems, protecting revenue that would otherwise just be lost. And you know what? Here's the key point to this. Cost reduction improves margin. Revenue growth improves valuation. And AI-driven warehouse automation does both. By making fulfillment faster, more reliable, and more adaptive, AI turns warehouse into competitive advantage, not just an expense to be minimized. That's why the smartest operators are not asking things like, how much labor can AI remove? They're asking things like, how much more business can our warehouse handle because of AI? And that's the shift we're kind of seeing across the industry.
Yeah, fantastic. So how do we decide what to automate first to maximize the return on investment for an operation?
Yeah, the fastest way to maximize ROI from what we've seen is to kind of work backwards from the constraints and revenue impact, not from a robotic or software features first standpoint. And at a high level, we focus on three main things. First, where does the operation break under pressure? So that could just be things like picking, packing, sortation, pallet building, maybe things like carrier cutoffs. Anywhere you see overtime or you see backlogs or even things like missed SLAs. Those are your highest ROI automation candidates because you're fixing the part of the operation that's actively limiting throughput and revenue. Secondly, where is labor most expensive? Where is it most scarce? Or maybe even, where is it most unstable? AI and automation deliver the biggest return when they stabilize labor heavy or error prone processes. If you're constantly hiring, training, or even replacing people in the same exact workflows, that's a really strong signal that processes should be automated or even augmented first. And then third, where does variability hurt you the most? So again, those things like promotions, seasonal spikes, customer mixes, even things like SKU velocity all introduce volatility. AI-driven automation performs best in these environments because it can rebalance the work, it can reprioritize tasks, and keep the operation flowing when plans break. At Softeon, this is where our AI layer becomes critical. We don't automate in isolation. With SAIL, the Softeon AI layer, we analyze live data across the WMS, the WES, robotics, and labor to identify true bottlenecks, and then apply automation exactly where it's going to deliver the most impact. So instead of asking things like, the big question, where should I put robots first? Which robots should we buy? The smarter question then becomes, where will automation help us ship more, miss fewer cutoffs, and scale revenue without scaling cost? When you answer that question first, the ROI almost always follows. And kind of speaking of that to James, can AI-driven robots collaborate safely? I know you talked about everyone's favorite topic, health and safety, but can robots and humans collaborate safely in the workspace?
Yeah, a great question and one that many people are interested in finding out. So the use of robots in warehousing has increased steadily over the last few years. There's statistics from 2025 that show around 15% of all warehouses have some form of automation. So not just robotics, but other forms of automation as well. And the use of robotics itself within the warehouse has increased around 40 to 50% in 2024, particularly cobots and AMRs, so the AMRs going around autonomously. All these modern robots have something called LiDAR, which is a kind of light detecting and ranging technology that allows them to, coexist with humans in the same environment. And as you would expect, they've been through lots of testing and experimentation to make sure that they're able to, work alongside. So they use these systems to detect the obstacles, build up a 3D model of their environment, and if they see something within that environment, typically they're stopping immediately, and then they're kind of assessing, is it safe for me to move on and to continue where I'm going? Maybe I've got to go around something in front. They've already mapped out the known parts of the warehouse, but people like you and I walking around, the warehouse doing our jobs are also coexisting in that space with them. So many of these spaces are also working very well. There's many examples of these working safely in environments today around the world. But I think if it goes wrong, because obviously sometimes these things do go wrong, the instances are few and far between, and they're typically because people weren't following the best practice, or maybe there was a lack of training and staff awareness. Someone jumped out in front of the robot or some stupid thing like that. So I think training and awareness alongside the sort of strong safety elements that the vendors have brought into these devices are what makes these able to collaborate efficiently with their human counterparts in the warehouse.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. So one more question for you. Where would you say AI is delivering the most value today? Do you think it's something like picking, packing, slotting, replenishment, or things like inventory accuracy?
Yeah, I mean, fantastic, great question. I think the biggest value that AI is bringing is in the speed of processing and analyzing of results. So, what AI can do is it can provide results to a complex, question or scenario in minutes that would have taken people man days of effort. So you would have needed, a staff of several people to pull together the data out of the warehousing system, to analyze it, to come up with the reports, to bring back, the suggestions and the ways of getting improvement over a longer time. Whereas the computer and the artificial intelligence is able to do that very, very quickly. So it's speeding up the decision making time. And I think if was to pick out what an area where these things are having the biggest impact, I think it still has to be the picking area, because picking is still where most of the resource sits, right? Most of the resource in the warehouse is in the picking environment. Typically, that's because there's a lot more of activity involved there in creating the orders, in putting things to a store area maybe, or even doing an e-commerce pick to multiple cart customer type order. So picking is clearly the area where there's a lot of efficiency value to be had, and that could be something like a slotting re-optimization alongside having the solution and the system work out which pick tasks should go together, which things should be optimized, where to start the picking activity, and how to then change that, how that changes from day to day. What it looks like today could be different from what it looks like tomorrow. And it's always been something which I think warehouse operations would have loved to have worked out the best way to do something, but the permutation, the calculation was just way too complicated to even undertake thinking about before the ability of AI to do this in a much more succinct and short time frame. I mean, it really can make those thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or maybe even millions of calculations in such a faster time that now allows larger, more complex problems to be taken on and solved, to then bring that optimization and that value back into an operation. So I think as I say, that for me that means collaborative picking solutions like cobots or AMRs, or also bringing together the two things to better optimize an operation.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, so I think that sort of now brings us to looking at some of the questions that people have started to put in. So let me just have a quick look at those. But one of the ones I'll certainly, Alice, I think you had a couple that you were going to bring to us.
Yeah, just bear with me one moment. I'll pop the camera back on. There we go. Okay, so I do have a couple questions. So, a lot of AI discussions feel very theatrical. What are customers actually doing today that's delivering measurable results inside the warehouse?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a totally fair question. And it's one we hear a lot. You know, AI is it's a huge topic right now. These things feel very like it's kind of a theory when we're talking about like what are we going to do 20 years from now? What's in the future? What's on the roadmap? Um, we're starting to see the practices. Customers aren't starting with those big theoretical projects. They're starting with very specific operational problems. You know, they're trying to figure out what they need to fix today. And today, AI is being used to support those day-to-day operations inside the warehouse. So, like I said earlier, things like labor planning, things like exceptions handling, task prioritization. For example, instead of supervisors constantly reacting to backlogs, AI can surface where work is starting to fall behind and recommend those corrective actions in real time. So it's again not theoretical. It's the system saying, "Hey, this is happening right now. You need to go fix this." We're also seeing measurable results in labor productivity. So faster onboarding of new associates and reduced reliance on tribal knowledge, especially in highly automated environments where coordination is complex. Um, the key difference is, though, AI is embedded directly within the WMS and operational workflows. It's not a science experiment. It's helping people make better ROI decisions during that shift. That's where the customers see the ROI today. So things like chatbots, things like onboarding, things like even things as intense as API calls out to different systems. It's all being augmented and improved with AI.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So we do have another one here. So for organizations early in the AI or automation journey, what's the biggest mistake you see them make when trying to adopt these technologies?
Yeah, I kind of hinted at that earlier. The biggest mistake that an organization can make, in my opinion, is starting with technology instead of starting with the problem they're trying to solve. So again, the question of what robots should we buy? What automation should we do? Instead of figuring out what the problem is and going from there. It's very tempting to say we want AI or we want more automation, but without a clear operational objective, those initiatives stall or underdeliver or disappoint in some other way. The most successful customers start by identifying a specific constraint. So again, things like labor availability, throughput variability, exception handling, and then apply technology very deliberately to that specific area. Another common mistake is underestimating the importance of data quality. So things like data quality, change management. I always say, people will always say, I can't take credit for it. Bad data in, bad data out. So that's especially true with AI and automation. They amplify what you already have there. If the underlying processes or data aren't solid, the results won't be either. The organizations that get the best results treat AI and automation as an evolution of their operation, not just a one-time project. And they focus on adoption just as much as they do capability.
Brilliant, thank you. So I've got another one here. So how do you balance automation and AI within workforce concerns, especially around change management and adoption on the warehouse floor?
Yeah, so I'll take that one, Alice. I've always thought of IT projects as not just being a question of, implementing software, but they're very much, a cultural and a change management project as well. And I think that's, really important when we think about the balance of AI and workforce concerns. So it's, important to have discussions with the workforce, bring the workforce along on the journey of the implementation of AI alongside what what they'll be doing. So, important to have them involved in the conversations, how this will change and improve their day-to-day work, what their thoughts are in terms of the way to do that. Obviously, that's going to be driven somewhat by the technology and the AI itself, but it's not something which should be done by an IT staff and then given to the workforce, and they then have to just take that on and run with it, because you're going to get pushback, you're going to get change and challenge happening because of that. So, bring those people along that journey, get them involved so that we're reducing the friction and making the situation better for the operation um, as things move forward. So, important that when, AI is put there as is a decision supporter and supporting the workforce rather than something that's making all of those decisions for them. They need to be involved in that and part of that. And I think that's where these things are going to be most successful in terms of the balance of, workforce concerns.
Brilliant, thank you. And then this is the last one on this side before we take over the Q&A box. So if you are advising a warehouse operator who wants growth, not just cost savings, what's the one AI-enabled capability they should prioritize first?
Yeah, I could take that. So if growth is the goal, the first capability I'd prioritize is better operational decision making in real time. Growth creates variability, more volume, more SKUs, tighter service expectations. The warehouse that can scale are the ones that can sense issues early and respond quickly without having to rely on things like heroics or institutional knowledge. AI can help by continuously analyzing workload, labor availability, and system constraints. And then supervisors can guide that towards the right decisions or actions during the shift, not after the fact. That kind of decision supports and enables growth without adding disproportionate headcount or complexity. It lets operators absorb the volume, onboard faster, and maintain service levels as a business scales.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'll pass over to James, if that's okay, to
Yep.
go through some more questions.
Yep. So I'm not going to call out people's names, but I'm sure they'll know. So got one here. Hi, James, Eric. You may answer this during the course of the conversation, but in case you don't, does predictive equipment maintenance fall within the remit of your WMS solution? How about proactive packaging, stock level management?
Yeah, so all of that, yes. So a little bit of both. So proactive packaging and stock level management, absolutely. So things like restocking, replenishment, figuring out, sending messages to external systems about what's going low in stock and what have you. From the predictive maintenance side, we do a little bit of that, but we also partner with companies that they do, industrial AI. Companies like IFS, who that's all they do. They do predictive maintenance and AI in the industrial AI space. Of course, things like equipment maintenance, and that's kind of hooked in, quote unquote, out of the box to things like our WMS.
Okay, another one we have here is, do you have a real world example of a customer using AI and a quick win they had on cost or productivity?
Yes. So I I know it sounds theoretical even when I talk about it, but those examples I was giving with Softy on Sale, the AI layer, those aren't theoretical. So those are real things. So things like the chatbots, which we call the Sale Assist, that's a real language chatbot that came out with 25.2, the latest release we had. And that's something it's essentially you can think of it like as like a chat GPT or Google Gemini where the large language module has ingested all of your live configurations, all of what's going on in the warehouse, even all of the user manual parts of it, like we said earlier. So you can just ask, how do I set up picking? How do I change packing operations? How do I do this? How do I do that? Or how do I tell me the best way, the fastest way to onboard this new user. They have experience in this type of industry. They blah blah blah. So you can give it all of the constraints. Something like you would just be talking to a person one-on-one, and the system can give you live answers of, this is the training plan I'd set out for this new person. Here's the best ways to save on labor costs. Um, and even with your, I'll pull up the Softy on Sale. I'll plug the Softy on Sale website. So if you scroll through, you can see we have Softy on Sale launch that's helping you deploy faster. So that's things like configuration advisors. That's saying, this is how you should set up your warehouse. This is how you should do integration testing when you're doing user acceptance testing of the software. We have AI wizards and flows. So things like, how should I do this? How should I set up this at the very beginning of the project? Um, and then the sale assist, like I said earlier, how do we onboard? How do we use these help agents that are embedded in the product? How do we use those to help us every day in real life? So that's kind of the support. That's the sale assist. And then kind of the one I wanted to get to here is the sale optimize. This is real-time warehouse intelligence. This is the sale assist, or sorry, the sale optimize uses things like what's going on in the real world. That's the example, the real example I used of weather, regional events, to figure out what you need to do from a task escalation point of view, from a lane shifting point of view. Those AI algorithms can learn on the fly in the background. No need to tweak anything. They're just automatically doing it. And it'll do real things. So real things like rerouting tasks and changing priorities and reassigning lanes based off of what they actually observe. And then again, you have the in-app help agents, so you can ask in real time, what's going on? What should I expect based off of this real world impact?
That's great. Thanks, Eric. Another one coming your way. Given the growth and increasing market share of Chinese robotics companies, what does the decision-making process for warehousing and logistic companies look like in order to avoid being beholden to a single or a handful of OEMs?
Yeah, that's a really important one. So our CTO, Mark Freilich, is huge on being agnostic about who we connect to. So we we work with all sorts of systems where we don't care if you're using some of the newest and latest and greatest, the fanciest, shiniest thing from China, or you're using something that's been on the market for 20 years out of Germany. They all connect in different ways. They all have different languages. And one of the ways we are able to be so agnostic, you can just, throw an API manual at us, throw a PDF at us, and we use what we call sale reach. This is the AI layer, part of the AI layer that's responsible for um, connecting to external systems. So you can throw a manual from a GoBot or throw a manual from High Robotics at it, and it can say, oh, here's how I can connect. Um, and I actually had a real example of a customer through I'm forgetting the name of the AGV. It was a smaller AGV, a new AGV. It was the first deployment in North America. It was for automated forklifts. The customer said, "I know you're not going to be able to connect to this, but I'd like to get an estimate of what the lift would be from the WMS side of things." From our team, our product team, literally threw the specs that pointed at the website for the specs, the PDFs, into our AI layer, and SailReach was able to say, "Here's exactly how we'll connect to it." And we essentially, in a few hours, made the connections. We were able to prove that we were able to send messages back and forth without having to do a whole design, without having to do testing on um, a week's worth of effort. We can just use that sale reach layer to connect to systems essentially in real time.
Right, there's one that I'll take here. Um, AI isn't perfect yet, so how do you suggest teams catch issues early as systems evolve? So I think some of what we talked about before. I think make sure that you understand the use case or the scenario that you're trying to solve with the AI. Make sure that the data is clean and the data is accurate. And when going through that, work out that it's giving you the results that you expect and it isn't coming up with strange results because of maybe the data or because of the posing and the way you've kind of structured the questioning and the prompting that you're putting to the AI. So there's certainly a trial and error element to it, and obviously it could be the difference between if you're developing something yourself as a company or if you're coming to one of the experts like Softion and others to help you with that in your particular space, which for us is obviously the warehousing space.
Yeah, yeah, good point. I see
Okay,
another
so
one
just
in there. Do you want me
yeah,
to?
there's a few more in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
there
I
was
see
what
one.
about this one about optimizing space? You want to take that one? I can
Yeah,
read that.
sure. So
So
that's
I'll read it.
um,
Hang on. So
yeah.
can we have an idea of how to use AI to optimize warehouse space availability with some examples?
Yep. So that's a perfect example of sale optimize. So that's looking at your real world patterns, your real world utilization of the warehouse. Again, the AI layer is looking at everything. It's not just looking at the velocity information about what's coming in, what's going out. It's also looking at things like space utilization. And that's how we're able to inject AI into things like slotting. So you're able to reconfigure the warehouse and optimize space based off of your actual velocity in and out. We've always kept track of one of my favorite tools in the WMS is our velocity heat map, which shows you kind of a historical look back of what the velocity has been in and out. But with Sail Optimize, it's kind of going above and beyond that. It's building on that. It's using, of course, that historical data, but it's able to look at kind of the real time, what's happening in real time, and forecast what you should do based on order demand, based off seasonality, how you should optimize space in the warehouse with that optimized tool.
Okay, one that I'll take. What would you? I think it's very much on the lines of the last one I was talking about as well. So, what would you say are the key new skills and training needs for people coming into the sector given these developments? And I guess I'll answer that in two ways because I'm not sure whether the question relates to warehouse operation people or whether it's, data analysts and experts within the AI space. So I think if it's the warehouse operators, then I think they need to come in with a mindset of being open to collaborating with this automation and having to change the way that they may have worked in previous warehouses or previous environments so that they can get the most of this new technology in the way that they will do their jobs in the future. So I think an openness to change and an openness to take on this new technology. If the question was more relating to you know the development of the AI and the skill sets, then obviously that's a slightly different one. I think there it's an understanding of the technology of artificial intelligence itself, but also the key is going to be, as we've said before, how to create the question, the prompting, and the shaping of the result that comes back. It's going to be more about having a skill set of understanding how to ask the right question with the right data and get the right and format the right response back that's going to be critical to successful skills needed for developing artificial intelligence for anything actually, but for specifically for the warehouse topic that we're talking about here today.
Yeah, for sure. I see another question in here in the Q&A box. For organizations with legacy WMS and limited budgets, what's the most realistic first AI use case to deploy without disrupting daily operations? Yeah, so this one's huge. The first place that I always see customers or even vendors like WMS providers or any software really in the space kind of dip their toes into the AI space are large language models. So that's in our case the Sale Assist. So that is a product that has, again, ingested all of our user manuals, all of the industry specific knowledge, and that's able to give you real advice. And this is really crucial. I know you're talking about limited budget and disrupting operations. This is the one where, you're not disrupting anything. It's literally only a value add. So you're able to ask a chatbot, how do I set up picking? How do I optimize packing? And the more data you send it, the better it's going to be. So again, good, bad data in, bad data out, good data in, good data out. So it's ingesting all of your information, figuring out how many people you have working, or it can be just as simple as, I have a 500-page user manual or 500-page best practice for my warehouse. I want you to, new user or new temp user or seasonal worker, I want you to use this tool to be onboarded quickly or ask questions to this as a first line of defense. That's kind of the first place I see people invest time and effort into.
So we just had another one pop in while you were talking there, Eric. Does Softion technology follow a logic-based AI or algorithmic-based AI?
Yeah, so this gets a little bit above my head, but I know, I know we use algorithmic based. And there is some logic in there for things like the LLM on ingesting the user manuals, but it is algorithmic based in terms of like the agentic use for things like slotting and live forecasting. It's not just like an if-then statement kind of AI. It's very intelligent, and it's continuing to get better as we invest more time and money into making these models better and better. And I will say, feel free to check out the Softion AI layer page on our website. It's called Softion AI Sale. If you want more information, and feel free to contact us if you have more intense questions that are maybe above my pay grade.
Okay, another one just came into the question box. Um, in the next 2 to 3 years, what AI capability will differentiate high-performing warehouses from average ones?
Yeah. So this is one of those things where the best time to start was a year ago. The next best time is today. So in 2 to 3 years, we're going to look back and see warehouses that invested in AI are going to be doing things like using our chatbots, the very basic LLMs that everyone's used to, the ChatGPT, Google Gemini. They're going to be using it to ingest all of that knowledge instead of relying on the institutional knowledge to inform their users. They're also going to be doing things like I'll just plug our Sale Assist and Sale Optimize. They're going to be optimizing their warehouse. They're going to be tweaking, and they're going to be growing. Again, to go back to my example of, instead of saying no to things, instead of having things be bottlenecks, the AI can actively look at and optimize your operations, and that makes a real impact. That means, you're not just cutting labor costs. I know a lot of people are really focused on cutting labor with AI, and that's a factor with automation and AI, cutting labor force. But in my opinion, the bigger impact of AI and automation is the ability to grow. So the growth that you're able to have with, 2, 3 years from now, using AI and automation to grow your business, to take on more orders, to add a new warehouse, add a new customer, um, with AI and automation, when you may not have been able to without AI and automation.
Great, thanks. I'm just looking back in because a couple of people put questions in the chat. So
Mm,
one of those I'm going to take. There's one for you to look at as well, Eric, but the one at the top there, which is about hospital supply chain. So it
yeah,
says, from a hospital supply chain perspective, how can AI bring about predictive forecasting for products required by a clinician? Any practical example, considering the unpredictable nature within A&E? And I have to say, I think that's more of a planning and demand planning question than it is a warehouse one for me. I think that the systems that should be working out demand signaling like that would be more of your planning system and less the warehouse system. So I think that's less of a question for the kind of systems that we're looking at, and more one for the demand forecasting systems to then provide that signaling and that information to warehouse and to the rest
yeah,
of the supply chain so that they can kind of work out how best to meet that demand. And that may mean, that you've got to stock differently or reserve inventory and those kind of things. But I think that's us in warehousing world working with the planning world, for me at
yeah,
least.
totally. Yeah.
What about that
Um,
other
I,
one, Eric?
yeah, I see another one down here. It says, as an SCM professional, I'm facing a critical reliability issue. AI repeatedly ignores specific updated instructions. Yeah, so exactly. So you input something in like new laws, and it instead of looking at that, it looks at outdated training data. Even after acknowledging its mistake and receiving the correct formula, the system continues to output incorrect calcs in favor of false compliance. Yeah, so this is, and yeah, hallucinations. So this is a huge one. We are very deliberate about the way we train our AI models in Sofyan. We continually test and stress test our models and tweak. There's parameters you can tweak for how creative it can be, for how literal it can be, for how verbose it can be, for as well as the ability to you can put different weights on things like new information versus historical facts that it's already had and trained on. So we have literally been doing this for years in the space, especially with the large language models. And we even have an internal tool that we've been using for more than a year for to answer things like RFPs. And that's a legally binding thing. So it's, we're saying, hey, customer, I can do XYZ. If the LLM hallucinates and says, "Yeah, well, we can do X, Y, Z," but we actually can't, that's a problem. So that's a potentially a contractually binding issue or a legally binding issue. So we take the hallucinations very seriously, and we try to train those out as much as possible as the models get better and better. Luckily, it's becoming less of an issue from what we've seen, but that is a huge thing we've seen and a huge reliability issue we've seen. So I would just say it depends on the model. It depends on the people that are using the model or in charge of the model. But I know our product team has been amazing at kind of whittling that away over the years to get rid of those false compliance things that you mentioned.
Yes, I'm not seeing anything in the question and answer. If there's any last questions, I mean, we're coming near to time, but It's a question of how quickly people can type.
Any last questions? Did we bore everyone, put them to sleep?
We'll just give it a moment, see if anybody's got some final questions, and then we can wrap it up if you both are happy.
Yes?
Yeah.
Oh, I see a question from someone asking, where can we best equip ourselves with the knowledge of AI?
Oh,
Um,
in the chat, yeah.
Softion's website. Go on just Google SAIL, Softion's AI layer. That's the first place I would start, at least for, our in particular. I'm joking, but our particular WMS platform, how we use AI. But of course, the best place to start, in my opinion, is using the tools. So using ChatGPT, using Google Gemini, Claude, using all of the large language model tools, and then going from there. So it's a huge area, but that's kind of the most, in my opinion, the most approachable um, part of it is the large language model. And then you can kind of wrap your brain around how AI can optimize with things like Sail Optimize and the agentic models. Oh, I see Bill put in the chat the link to our Softion AI layer page. Thank you, Bill.
I think
Okay,
that's
so
probably it, Alice.
yeah, yeah. So I will be sending out the recording and I'll add that link as well. So I'll send that out to all participants and to all attendees tomorrow. So are you happy for me to wrap up?
Yeah, great. It's always good to talk to you, James. I appreciate the
Yep.
conversation.
And thank you to the participants for your questions.
Yeah. Okay, so we hope that this discussion has helped clarify how AI and automation are being applied in practical ways to drive efficiency, scalability, and resilience in modern warehouse operations. Thank you, Softion and Tryon Solutions, for sharing their insights, and thank you to everybody that has joined us today. If you do have any remaining questions, please feel free to send them over to myself and I can pass it on and then get back to you with the answer. And yes, we appreciate your time and participation. I'll be in touch tomorrow with all of the links and everything that you may need. And yes, thank you and have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.